Hey everyone, Zian over here from Nintendo Life, and today we're here to share with you our review of Immortals Fenyx Rising on the Nintendo Switch. Now, this review was originally written by Kate Gray for NintendoLife.com, but has been adapted for video by me. Do you remember when you were 5 and your mom would ask if you wanted anything from the supermarket, and you'd probably respond with whatever branded cereal you'd last seen an advertisement for in between episodes of Scooby-Doo or Power Rangers? Then 2 hours later, she'd return with whatever off-brand cereal approximation she could find because it was a better value. So then you'd just end up eating Cocoa Porps or Fruity Rounds for breakfast. Remember the disappointment and the discovery that off-brand stuff is almost as good, but not quite? That's the best way to describe Ubisoft's newest game, Immortals Fenyx Rising. It's trying to be a lot of things, and it's got the right ideas, but it's just not quite as good as any of them. Comparing a game to another game can feel lazy, but Immortals Fenyx Rising, which used to go by the far superior title of Gods and Monsters, isn't shy about hiding its influences. Immortals is the off-brand serial version of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, mixed with a large helping of Assassin's Creed and a generous dash of God of War. Made as a spin-off of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Immortals Fenyx Rising deals with the gods and monsters of ancient Greek myth, albeit in a much more lighthearted way than its Ubisoft stablemate Odyssey did. The titular Fenyx is a myth superfan, and it's up to him or her, depending on your avatar choice, to defeat the evil monster god Typhon, who has imprisoned some of the Olympians in an attempt to seize power. Fenyx is tasked with freeing the gods one by one, enlisting their help in the form of blessings that slightly improve some aspects of her combat abilities. Armed with a sword, an axe, a bow, and various special attacks that unlock as you play, Fenyx fights all manners of mythological beasts. Minotaurs, chimeras, and gorgons can be found alongside regular swordsmen and animals. The combat is fun, drawing inspiration from Souls-like dodge, parry, hit combos, but comes into its own after a few skill tree upgrades. Like Breath of the Wild, the open world is available to you from the beginning, and you're free to explore it as you please. Cliff climbing and gliding are the main methods of traversal, both of which use up Fenyx's stamina meter. And there are even wild animals that you can tame to help you get to places faster. Like Assassin's Creed, Fenyx must climb to the highest spot in each region to reveal the land, and she can then use Farsight to scout out chests, puzzles, collectibles, and other goodies nearby. Now, Farsight does tend to take the mystery and wonder out of exploration, reducing the world to a bunch of Assassin's Creed-like map markers, so it's a shame that Immortals Fenyx Rising didn't borrow more heavily from Breath of the Wild in this case. However, it's up to you to use Farsight as much or as little as you like. The most egregious borrowed mechanic is perhaps the puzzles, both in the overworld and in underground action platforming levels called Vaults of Tartarus, and they have a lot in common with Breath of the Wild's famous shrines. They even look a lot like the shrines, with the same blue and bronzy ancient technology aesthetic. The puzzles mostly take the form of push block on the switch, roll ball into hole, and shoot the thing with your bow and arrow. And Fenyx interacts with most objects by utilizing a power that's basically Breath of the Wild's magnesis. There are also extra puzzles that don't affect the main plotline, but net you a bunch of rewards to upgrade your character and loadout. Odysseus' challenges are about bow and arrow skills. Constellation challenges mean finding a bunch of glowy balls and slotting them into a grid in the correct configuration. Lyre challenges require you to memorize a tune, run hundreds of meters, then create it on a big lyre. And fresco challenges are sliding block puzzles that can, quite frankly, go to hell. Some of these challenges are fun. Some of them feel like a lot of busy work. A lot of the puzzles end up being frustratingly tricky, either because of the fiddly physics engine or because vital elements like buttons, blocks, and levers are exactly the same shade of bronze as everything else. The wide open lands of the Golden Isle are pretty from a distance, but quite boring up close, and not very pretty on the Switch in particular. The main 4 areas are colorful, but they're all either green or dusty brownish orange that just turns into visual sludge. Because each area is modeled on a different god, Athena, Aphrodite, Ares, and Hephaestus, there are some concessions to the aesthetic of each one. Aphrodite's land is covered in lush green plant life, while Athena's area is a rusty, Doritos dust-covered war zone, but largely the contents of each area is a bit samey. Now, the story is where Immortals Fenyx Rising really steps out of Zelda's shadow. The game's events are narrated by Prometheus, you know, the one who perpetually has his liver eaten by a bird, and Zeus, the king of the gods. This narration varies from gratingly goofy to genuinely funny, with moments like a notable credit fake-out and multiple tongue-in-cheek references to modern technology and other games. Most of Immortals Fenyx Rising is trying so hard to be something else, but the story is its own beast, unshackled to what came before. It's by no means a perfect story, but it's full of warmth, character, and plenty of mythological research. It's almost as if the writing was the one thing that didn't get workshopped to death. If only Immortals Fenyx Rising had the courage to be its own game instead of copying Nintendo's homework. Of course, Immortals Fenyx Rising could never be as good as something with the talented team and monetary resources of a Zelda game, but the constant comparison does it no favors either. When it goes its own way, there are genuine moments of surprise and delight, interacting with cheeky vain Hermes, witnessing the bickering between Aphrodite and her ugly husband Hephaestus, and pulling off the perfect dodge or parry are all great moments. But when Immortals Fenyx Rising gets irritating or its puzzles don't quite work, you're just reminded that you're playing an imitation of Breath of the Wild, and not the real thing. Immortals Fenyx Rising tries to capture lightning in a bottle with its Breath of the Wild inspired gameplay, but ends up being more of a lightning thief. It's not as nice to look at, and the puzzles aren't as satisfying. Still, the combat is fun, the storytelling is excellent, and despite not being anywhere near as polished as Nintendo's 2017 effort, it certainly does a passable impression. If you crave more Zelda and don't mind the off-brand version, go for it. But if for some reason you still haven't played Breath of the Wild, then that's the game to go for. We here at Nintendo Life give Immortals Fenyx Rising on the Nintendo Switch a 7 out of 10. Now, I personally have spent a fair amount of time with the game as well, so I wanted to cover a few things that Kate didn't necessarily discuss or that I just felt differently about. Now, graphically and technically, this game does have some hiccups here and there, and of course it's not going to run and look as impressive as it does on other platforms, but I'm genuinely surprised by how well this game runs and looks. Most next-gen ports that eventually come over to the Switch usually end up looking fairly blurry and muddy. Immortals doesn't really seem to have that problem. There is a lot of texture pop, occasional slowdowns, and some textures just look downright awful. But considering that this game wasn't designed for Switch, I feel like Ubisoft and its team did a pretty good job bringing it over. Now, I can't say for certain as I haven't played a retail build of the game on any other platforms, but on a purely technical level, it may be worth going with another console if you're considering playing this game, if you have the option. Some of the puzzles are extremely monotonous and frustrating when things don't go right, and sometimes the platforming requires you to be extremely precise or it just doesn't play well. There are a few vaults I've encountered where parts get so frustrating that I considered putting the controller down and just not picking it back up. And maybe that's more of a personal problem, but I don't know. Now, I still haven't finished the game yet, but I've been having quite a lot of fun with it, and it's sort of scratching that Breath of the Wild itch that I was hoping to get with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So I'm pretty much in the same boat as Kate. I feel like if you've already finished Breath of the Wild and you're just looking for more of that kind of game, this is going to be a great option for you. But if you're someone getting a Switch for the holidays who's never played Breath of the Wild, or you've had your Switch this whole time and you still, for some reason, haven't dived in, then you know what to do. If you'd like to check out our full written review, you can find that along with more news and information about Immortals Fenyx Rising over at nintendolife.com. Otherwise, we have up a video of over 13 minutes of gameplay here on the channel, and we have a PS5 versus Nintendo Switch comparison video as well, so you could see really how different the game looks on other hardware. And as always, be sure to let us know in the comments down below your thoughts on Immortals Fenyx Rising and if you're planning on picking up the game. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Zian from Nintendo Life. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next time.